That was a great piece of music. Was that T-Rex's first chart hit?
Not quite. They did kind of get into the lower reach of the chart with Deborah, but that sort of got re-released as well. So that was, I suppose, actually you're right in the sense that it was T-Rex as opposed to Deborah was released by Tyrannosaurus Rex. I found myself going backwards quite quickly to the kind of bongos and acoustic guitars bit of Tyrannosaurus Rex, and sort of rapidly kind of found myself in a group of one in my class who were all listening to Black Sabbath and Deep Purple at that time, I think. So I stuck with T-Rex when I was 14 or 15, and I have to say I was a kind of fairly, for a little while at any rate, a fairly sort of glam, slightly fey, and probably the word we would use now, well, perhaps we used it then, would be camp, 14-year-old.
Would that explain you dodging out of school to drink posh coffee and smoke consulate cigarettes?
Well, to an extent, yes. I was, actually a lot of my friends were in the fifth form and sixth form, rather pretentious. So, and of course, once we got into the lower sixth, we had plenty of free periods. So, yes, I would go off and drink filter coffee and feel existential and French. Gitane and Gauloise came later, but I started on consulate, cool as a mountain stream, menthol cigarettes.
And Rhino White Swan, as you say, I think was the move from Tyrannosaurus Rex to T-Rex, and also the move from acoustic to electric guitar.
Yeah, and in a move that accelerated rapidly, and within about 6 months we were getting Jeepster, which was pretty much pure rock and roll, and Get It On as well. So kind of from this fey, rather folky thing to so actually kind of quite almost grungy. So it was. So you went through kind of a lot of different things on that short journey. And the next thing was Roxy Music, which their first Virginia Plain, and the first album, which I absolutely loved.
And I suppose it was retrospectively Mr. Bolan was attributed to be the founder of glam rock.
Yeah, which I guess in many ways he was. I suppose Slater were around at that moment, but I mean that again was a sort of slightly different musical journey from skinheads to, and very shortly I suppose you had Bowie as well as a very big influence, and I suppose that kind of that feyness, that sort of pretension to some extent. You can also trace back to Hunky Dory and particularly Ziggy Stardust, of course. So all around about that time, 1971, 1972, I think it was an interesting time to start taking notice of music.
You speak of it with great affection, and then your fourth choice moves your favourite taste in music to quite a different place altogether. Tell us about your fourth choice. This, I think,
I'm right, is Ali Alibaba, Have You Any Bullshit?
You are correct.
Yes, I thought it might be. So, I try to think about, the records I would listen to and my friends would listen to when I was at college. And I think it's fair to say that I went to college in 1975, so it was right at the end of, I suppose, the 60s hangover. And then 1976, and actually I can remember being in the pub Christmas 1975, and a couple of my friends saying, "Oh, we're going up to town to the 100 Club, and we're going to see this band called the Sex Pistols, and they have fights with the audience, and they spit on the audience." And I thought, well, really? No, I think I'll just stay here in the pub. So I never got to see the Sex Pistols. In fact, I had tickets to see them twice more, once in Bristol and once in Oxford, and both times either the gigs were cancelled or the Sex Pistols failed to turn up. So it was right at this kind of cusp of the old music and the new music, and the music I liked at the time was still very firmly rooted in the psychedelic tradition, but with a kind of slightly dangerous edge. So kind of a lot of bands that were rooted in the squat scene around Ladbroke Grove, West London, and other places, and bands like the Pink Fairies, the Pretty Things, but also Gong, who were half French. And Gong I saw about 9 times altogether. And their leader, David Allen, then popped up with this band, Here and Now, who are even more into the kind of squat/free festival ethos. And played a very similar kind of psychedelic space music, whatever you want to call it. And this track for me was the acme of all that, really. And I can remember sitting in, listening to it on happy afternoons when I didn't have to write an essay, and indeed in the year after I left college, and I had various disreputable friends, some of whom were squatting, who I would listen to it with, and it brings back a memory of a very free time in every sense.
Well, let's bring back that memory for you with Gong.